Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Honeywell's first in a series of LinkedIn Live events for life sciences. We are very excited to be here with you today to discuss life sciences and quantum computing. So as we're speaking, I encourage you to use the chat button to ask any questions during the session. If we aren't able to get to them today, we will follow up after the event. I'm delighted to have two people joining me today who are two of the most qualified to speak about quantum computing. So Tony Uttley, a colleague of mine at Honeywell, and Denise Ruffner of Cambridge Quantum Computing. I'll introduce myself and then we can learn a bit more about Tony and Denise before jumping into the session. So my name is Cynthia Pussinen. I am the Vice President and General Manager of Honeywell's Life Sciences and Specialty Chemicals business. Prior to joining Honeywell about a year ago, I spent 25 plus years in the life sciences proper industry. So focusing on developing, delivering therapies, across a variety of different therapeutic areas and multiple modalities and platforms. I spent about 19 years with Pfizer. I started my career in the labs in small molecule chemistry, focused mainly on inflammation and infectious diseases. I then followed the drug development continuum by moving into formulation development, followed by roles in global project management, portfolio leadership. I spent time as the global head of supply chain logistics, and my most recent role with Pfizer was as the head of strategic portfolio management, which focused on Pfizer's pre-POC portfolio. I spent 6 years with Ipsen as the president of Ipsen Biosciences, which was their US subsidiary. I was the head of R&D and technical operations, and this role encompassed R&D, so chemistry, biology, translational sciences, as well as full GMP manufacturing, analytical and process development, quality operations at 4 sites globally. And then I spent just under a year with Actinium Pharmaceuticals, a company located in Midtown Manhattan. I was the Executive Vice President of Technical Operations and Supply Chain. Tony, I'll turn it over to you for an introduction, and then we can go on to Denise.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good morning and good evening. Good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tony Uttley. I'm the president of Honeywell Quantum Solutions. And I'm not offended if you don't think of Honeywell and quantum computing at the same time. That's something that's very understandable. And usually because most people don't know what it takes to actually go build a quantum computer. I can say definitively for the last 10 years, Honeywell has been working on the underlying technologies that are necessary for any quantum computing, things like cryogenic systems and ultra-high vacuum systems, things like magnetic field controls. And then for the kind of quantum computing we do, which is called trapped ion, we also have photonics and integrated circuit design that goes into our systems. And if you think about it, it's kind of like a mini pharmaceutical plant, a mini petrochemical plant. And what Honeywell does very, very well is some of the most complex control system integration in the world. I have been very privileged to lead this organization. For the past 5 years, we've been actively designing, developing, and now releasing a series of the world's most capable quantum computers. I have a background in mechanical engineering, so some might say it's turning over into kind of a quantum mechanical engineering. I started at NASA, at the Johnson Space Center. I was a consultant with the Boston Consulting Group for a very long time, and then have been at Honeywell for 10 years. And again, have been privileged to be able to lead and bring this to market. Denise, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tony. Like Cynthia, I started out in the lab, but I'm a biologist, a neurobiologist and molecular biologist. Right now, currently, I'm Chief Business Officer at Cambridge Quantum Computing, and that's Cambridge in the UK, not in Boston, although I do live in Southern California. In my role as Chief Business Officer, I'm in charge of all business development and strategy for our company. I also work on a quantum startup ecosystem called One Quantum and a group called Women in Quantum. So very proud of the quantum ecosystem and of the development of quantum computing. Cambridge Quantum Computing is about 6 years old. We have over 70 scientists worldwide in the UK, US, and Japan. We specialize in quantum software. So we write the software that runs on quantum computers. And some of the areas of our specialty are chemistry, life sciences, machine learning, optimization, finance, and cybersecurity. So we have a lot of expertise. We are proud, we are a partner with Honeywell. We've been able to run our software on the Honeywell Quantum Systems, and we are very excited about the Honeywell performance and their overall program, and I'm very proud to be here.
Great, thank you so much, Tony and Denise. So as I mentioned, we're really excited to talk to you today about life sciences and how quantum computing can be applied in the industry. So taking a step back, life sciences has been in the forefront of the news over the last few months as we all look to the industry to deliver treatments or vaccines for COVID-19 to help return us to some modicum of normalcy. And we're really looking to the industry for a worldwide or planetary solution. So drug development is not easy. Production of pharmaceutical drugs is not easy. The raison d'etre for the industry is to improve the quality of life for patients around the world, treating disease and curing where possible. It takes about 10 to 13 years and $2.5 billion or north thereof to discover, develop, and commercialize a single pharmaceutical drug. These are stats that you probably face and know very well every single day. 5 in 5,000 potential drugs that enter preclinical testing make it to human testing. So to get to these 5,000 entering the preclinical testing phase, you need an enormous funnel or really different computing power to help design smarter. So one of these 5,000 potential drugs that enters preclinical testing gets to market. Not very good odds of success, only about 0.02%. The majority of discovery researchers in life sciences never actually works on a product that makes it to market. And so life sciences have a truly tall order in front of them. You're locked in this perpetual race to innovate, to bring new drug therapies to market as quickly and cost effectively as possible. The industry is under intense pricing pressure, heightened scrutiny from regulatory bodies around the world who are driving, and rightfully so, focus on quality, patient safety, data integrity. In parallel, your product portfolios are shifting with the advent of personalized medicine to smaller batches, gene and cell therapy, to newer technologies, and biologics, which are typically more challenging compared to small molecule derived therapies. You have dispersed suppliers using contract manufacturing organizations increasingly. So the matrix in which you operate on a daily basis continues to increase in complexity. But the importance of your product line is never more so apparent than today. There's an inextricable link between the products generated by the life sciences industry and the public's health. I personally am proud to be part of Honeywell, where we are honored to be part of the solution, whether it's in providing ongoing supply of N95 masks or research-grade chemicals for use in discovery labs, to automation technologies and services targeted at providing life sciences manufacturers with the tools to increase their consistency, data integrity, operational excellence, and quality, as well as packaging materials for solid oral doses and liquids packed in vials. Harnessing the power of quantum computing can significantly deliver the potential to accelerate timelines for and to enhance the quality of various stages of pharmaceutical and development research processes. The greatest initial applications likely lie in earlier stages, including target identification and validation, in silico modeling of molecular structures, and optimization. Life sciences companies could reduce considerable time from the 3 to 6 years on average that it takes in the preclinical phase, thereby accelerating the speed and reducing the cost of drug development. Quantum could significantly reduce this timeline, but nobody really knows by how much. So let's press on Tony and Denise for a few questions. So what is quantum computing, and what potential exists for it to truly transform the pharmaceutical industry? Tony, can I ask you to lead off?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm going to do something I think in this session where I will say quantum computing, super complex. In our instantiation of it, we're literally using an atom, a single atom, to impart quantum information. That becomes our quantum bit, our qubit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some analogies because I think that helps most people to understand how it works. And so you'll have to forgive that some of them won't be technically absolutely precisely correct, but I think it'll help get the idea. So I'll start with, you don't think of it as a faster computer. Think of it as a tool. It helps solve problems, and in particular, it helps solve problems very differently than classical computing does today. Why does it? It does it because there are some just incredible properties of quantum physics. You may have heard this idea of a superposition where a quantum bit, this qubit, can not only be a 0 or a 1, it can be both a 0 and a 1 at the same time. Just weird, blows your mind, right? You can have both things at the same time during the middle of the computation. Things like entanglement, where you can have two quantum bits that come together, that you have now imparted information, and then you separate them and they stay correlated. They know what each other is doing even at a distance when separated. These are properties that we can take advantage of to solve particular kinds of problems. Not every problem. This isn't something you're going to use Excel on quantum. This is something where, imagine a problem that expands exponentially. Think of something like aircraft routing. You have a bunch of different airports. You have a bunch of different kinds of airplanes. You have no way, at least right now in the COVID situation, of knowing exactly how many passengers are going to be showing up. When you start to compile each of those things, it becomes an exponential type of a problem. And quantum computing lends itself to those exponential problems because as you add these quantum bits, your capability expands exponentially. I once had it described to me, and this isn't perfect, but I once had it described to me as, think about taking a box of dry spaghetti and you pour it out in your hand. And your job is to put them in order from smallest to largest. And so the way a typical computer works is you put one down, you take the next one and you say, is that bigger or smaller? And I will put it on one side or the other. And you keep on doing that until you've laid all of these out on a table. The quantum computer, you can imagine pouring that same kind of bolus of spaghetti into your hand, and you tip it up and you just knock it onto a table. Once you've done that, it is automatically ordered from smallest to largest. That is the kind of approach that a quantum computer would take in solving some of these problems.
So I'll jump in here. Thanks, Tony. And I come to this from high performance computing or classical computing, and I look at those big supercomputers out there and I think, wow, they're so huge, they must be able to solve any problem. And that's the issue. They can't solve every problem. There are many problems in the world, and especially in life sciences, that are difficult for high performance computing or classical computing to solve. And so it's exactly the essence of what Tony said, that quantum computers solve programs differently or holistically. So it's going to be very impactful in our world for quantum computers as they get larger. And one of the questions we've already gotten in the chat is whether the software that you run on a classical computer is the same as the software that's run on a quantum computer. And I'm just going to say it's not. It has to be written differently, and we'll talk about that more later. But I want to look at what are some of the things that quantum computing might be able to do. And when I think about large compute problems, I think about personalized medicine. And I think about looking at an individual's DNA sequence, and I look at taking that sequence, looking at clinical data, and how do you use that, all that data in a quick period of time to diagnose and treat a patient. So that would be something that quantum computing could greatly help. Drug discovery, as Cynthia said, it takes 10 to 13 years to develop and commercialize a drug. What would happen if we could use quantum computing to better predict compounds that might be effective for a protein or receptor? That would be great. And so quantum computing is going to allow us questions that we haven't been able to answer computationally. And it will also help us ask new questions that we probably haven't even thought of yet, or we're just thinking of now. And these new questions and kind of this ability to do this new compute will be a game changer for the industry, and I believe will greatly speed things up.
Great, thank you both. Could you maybe share with us what the current challenges are that you're seeing in the industry? What are people struggling with that you see quantum being able to help answer?
So life sciences does need a lot of compute power, and mostly with the evolution of personalized medicine and wanting to look at someone's DNA sequence and use that. It's interesting, earlier this week, scientist Stefan Bekarov of the University of Virginia published a quantum algorithm that he believes that can determine whether a person has a disease based on their genomic sequence, just what I've been talking about. What's interesting is that he's written an algorithm, and it's a very interesting algorithm, but we don't yet have the compute power to run it on a large quantum computer. So it's an aspirational algorithm that needs to be further tested. So what excites me so much about Honeywell and working with Honeywell is the innovation that they've brought to quantum computing. They have a tremendous roadmap that's very aggressive, and it shows all of us in the industry that the Honeywell quantum systems have the power to make a huge impact on compute. And that's really what excites us. So there's many areas of challenges in life sciences, and everybody on the call, I'm sure, has their own particular area. So I look at drug screening. How do you take a compound library? How do you identify which compounds will probably impact the protein or the receptor that is your target? If we could speed that up, how would that impact drug development? Supply chain is an issue. We've all just gone through a period where there were a lot of supply chain issues with the coronavirus. What would happen if we could use quantum computing to really look at optimal operation of manufacturing and distribution? That could really help all of us, and that's hospitals and physicians and other industries. So there's a lot of areas of pain in life sciences and in the world where I think quantum computing can make a huge impact.
You know, one of the things I get asked a lot is what kind of areas show the most promise in quantum computing? And if I first start by saying kind of the classes of problem. So what classes of problem? You think about optimization as a class of problem, machine learning as a class of problem, quantum chemistry, so chemistry, molecule, materials development as a class of problem. And why do they then lend themselves to something that you would do on quantum computing? So let's start with something very near and dear to life sciences. You're doing drug development. So finding a binding energy for a molecule or determining the most efficient chemical transition, those are immensely challenging for classical computing. They take up way too much computational power. And when you start to add variables that really will have an influence in both of those two cases, it oftentimes is intractable for today's classical computing. And so they lend themselves to areas where the size of quantum computers that exist today are not doing that. What they are doing is allowing you to shrink a molecule down, show that you can get to that binding energy more efficiently, or that chemical transition more efficiently. And then as you expand the size, the capability of these quantum computers, you'll be able to expand the molecule size. In other parts of life sciences, as Denise talked about, things like supply chain, when you start to route something like a vaccine, you not only do you care about all the point A's and the point B's, meaning where the vaccine's manufactured, where are they delivered, you have to start thinking about the time frame, the temperatures that these, as soon as you start adding in variables, you expand exponentially the challenge of that supply chain effort. Again, those lend themselves to problems that could be solved for with quantum computing. And then there are just very challenging because take machine learning. So how would machine learning be applied? When we're doing scans of MRIs or X-rays today, it is a whole library of things that we've seen before. It's not a library of all the things you could ever see. And therefore, the systems get trained on things that we've already seen, but they don't necessarily get trained on looking for things that we may look at in the future. And classical computing does not do that well. Quantum computing actually has a knack for natural type systems, and it does so because quantum physics is a probabilistic science. It has a distribution of potential outcomes that you can look at and then blend into something like machine learning to go and get answers that you're really looking for, which is what doctors are looking for. It's what certainly patients are looking for. And it really opens up what the promise of quantum computing can do for life sciences.
Great, thank you. Thanks both. There might be a perception out there that quantum is a solution that's really quite far out of reach, something that won't be available for years and years. My question is, can quantum computing be implemented today in the industry, life sciences industry, in years from now?
So let me take that one. I usually talk about quantum computing in 3 eras. So the era that we're in right now is this emergent era. Quantum computers didn't exist, now they exist. That's pretty profound. That's a pretty big jump that really only happens one time in any technology development, and it is an outstanding time. Why? Because you can actually use real quantum algorithms on real quantum hardware and find out what's working well, what's not, what's showing the most promise. Where should we all, in terms of the entire industry, be applying effort right now to be able to go and expand? I'm going to skip an era. I'll go to the 3rd one. I call it classically impossible. This is a time where when you use a quantum computer to solve a problem, you could use the fastest, most highest performing supercomputer on the planet. You could run it for 1 million years and you wouldn't get to the answer that the quantum computer is getting. That still is a time away. That is not right now. We're talking years to get to something like that. But there's a middle era, and that middle era I call classically impractical. Why is it classically impractical? Because while you theoretically could use a classical computer to solve a problem, you don't. Why don't you? Either it takes too long, or it costs too much, or it consumes so much power, so much electricity to go and actually generate that computational answer that you just don't. While we're in this emergent era now, we are quickly moving towards this era where we're testing the boundaries on what is classically impractical. And that is a very important time. Now imagine that right now, you can run a quantum algorithm on a quantum computer, our quantum computer, and you have a way to use a classical computer and check that you got the right answer. So there's a validation part of time right now that you can use to build up trust, that we as Honeywell are building up trust with our customers. That era will stop. There will be no other way to fact check that answer than what is coming out of the quantum computer. And so what we do right now with our partners to prove out what we call this path to value creation.
Thank you.
One other thing I would say, which is the way you use your phone today, where you go in and click something on a search bar, most people don't think about what happens after that. You know, that problem, that query goes to the cloud, right? Goes to a bunch of servers and starts to go through an algorithm that is searching. Quantum computing is going to work much the same way. You may not know that when you did something, somewhere in the back, there was a quantum processor that was taking part, maybe just a small part of that computation, breaking it down and solving it. But certainly over this first era, this next 3 to 5 years, that's going to be happening, and it's largely going to be happening in the background.
Okay, got it. Great. Thank you, Tony. So Denise, I'm going to ask you who in life sciences is using quantum computing today, and then maybe you could describe a few use cases. So what specifically for?
Sure, Cynthia. So Cambridge Quantum Computing does have a number of customers that we're working on life science solutions with. I can talk about one of them. It's a Japanese chemical and life sciences company called JSR. And with JSR, we have used quantum computing to determine ground state and excited state energy calculations, which is computationally very intense. And it's very important when looking at molecular interactions in a system. So we've been very excited about the work we're doing with JSR to understand molecular interactions. We have other customers that are, surprise, surprise, working on drug screening and asking us to help them develop quantum algorithms so that we can speed up that drug screening by predicting which compounds will be active for a series of chosen receptors. That's a project we're very excited about. We'd love to help advance treatment of many serious diseases. We also are working on supply chain. As Tony mentioned, optimization of supply chain and optimization of delivery of drugs or vaccines or pharmaceuticals. But I think the biggest thing that I'm most excited about is our new material work. So we are working with people to develop new materials. And you go, what does that mean? What does it mean to develop a new material? And I actually discussed this with my husband last night, and he said, think about plastic. Think about the advent of plastic and how it changed the world. So think about being able to envision and design a new material that will work in a biological system, that could be for an implant, that could be for any number of things. And I think that's where we'll see a lot of innovation. And we're very excited to work on these new materials with our partners. So quantum computing is going to help impact the world in many ways in life sciences and overall. And I think what's exciting is the power is using the most powerful quantum computer in the world from Honeywell.
Thank you. So listening to both of you speak from different perspectives on quantum, so one being the hardware needed and then the other being software, how do you select the right partner to work with in order to realize value most quickly?
You can go ahead.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm a partner. Great question, Cynthia. It's really an important and critical choice when you go out and you look for someone to do quantum computing with. And I want to tell you, don't just talk to one person, talk to a couple people, learn about it, be educated. At Cambridge Quantum Computing, we actually have developed a methodology. And the methodology kind of has a formula where we sit down and we look at some of the problems and challenges that you're having, and how do we choose a problem that we're going to jointly address. And we do that with our scientific team. We also, our business development team is also scientific. So we talk science first, and we choose a problem. And then as part of our methodology, we set up a series of milestones so that we can monitor the success of our work and really bring the work along in a series of phases and make adjustments as needed. So it's important when you look at a partner that you find scientific depth along with quantum computing depth. It's more than just someone being able to program a quantum computer. You need someone that also really understands the science. A track record is really important. Look at what they've done and how that's impacted the world. It also helps, Cambridge Quantum Computing has access to the latest Honeywell systems, which gives us a great advantage in that our customers can run on the greatest hardware. And I'll let Tony talk about what's new and what's great there. But right now, and I think for the future, Honeywell has the best quantum computers. That's it, the best, right here. And the final point is that we also invite customers to come work alongside of us. So during an engagement, customers will come maybe come virtually or physically. We'll see about that. In the past, they've come to our offices and they've worked alongside our scientists. And it's just a great way that that you can understand what we do and how we do it and learn from our approach. So in summary, I would say, take your time, choose the right partner, look at their methodology, their communication, their scientific expertise, and together, those are the points that make a collaboration or a research project successful.
So I thank you for that, Denise. I appreciate that. And I certainly, our partnership has been fabulous as we've gotten into kind of the beginnings of quantum computing here. I am gonna, despite the fact that I can't see you, I'm gonna ask you, the audience, to do something, which is, wherever you are, raise your hand if you know how to program a quantum computer. Raise your hand. So I should not be raising my hand. Right now, and this is where we are in the kind of the generational growth of quantum computing. Think about it going into classical computing way, way back, and somebody had to write in the machine language. The people who know how to program a quantum computer are often called quantum theorists. You can think of them as hybrid mathematician and physicists. And that is not either an easy thing to do, nor are there many people on the planet who can go do it. Which is not a problem. That's not most people's job to think about, how do I go program a quantum computer? What it is meant to say is, yes, to get the most out of trying to use quantum computing as a tool, quantum computing as a path to help solve some of these complex problems, you actually do need help. That's why we partner with folks like Cambridge Quantum Computing, because they have experts in three things that are very important. One is quantum algorithm development. So think about it as, you take a problem, whatever your problem actually is, molecule development or logistics, you have to translate that into a math model, and then you have to translate that math model into a quantum algorithm, quantum circuit. Again, very challenging to do. They do it extremely well. The second is, you need some domain expertise. One of the reasons that Honeywell got into this business from the beginning, not only did we have the underlying technologies that you need for quantum computing, but we have the domain expertise in many of these areas. We do chemical development as a company. We are in aerospace developing complex control systems. We do, again, some of the biggest, most sophisticated and complex system integrations in the world. We do automated routing within inside of warehouses to be able to make sure that we're optimizing delivery of packages and delivery of goods from point A to point B. Those are businesses we're already in. And we know as a company that they've already bumped up against some of these super complex computational challenges. So do we expect to be one of our best and biggest customers within quantum computing? Absolutely. Can we then translate that domain expertise to help people in life sciences do the work that they're doing? Of course. And that's, again, where Cambridge Quantum Computing comes in, because they have domain experts in chemistry to be able to go and think about it, not just as a quantum physicist, but as a chemist. And then the third piece is, you want to eventually abstract this layer of software. You don't want everybody to have to be a quantum theorist to be able to write a quantum algorithm for a quantum computer. And so being able to develop that abstraction layer software is very important. So how do you actually work with somebody? It starts, just as Denise said, you think about the kinds of problems that you have, and some of them are very blue sky problems. It's like, boy, I wish we could do this. And then you say, does that lend itself to quantum computing? It may not. And they would be the first thing we'd say, or CQC would say, nope, that's not something that gets solved well with a quantum computer. But quite often, you might imagine, you do say, yeah, you know what, that is an exponentially increasing problem set. That is something that lends itself to quantum computing. here's what that looks like. Here's what that translation from business problem to math model to early stage quantum computer. One of the questions that came through was, what kind of quantum volume do you actually need to go and solve some of these very challenging problems that exist in life sciences? And it depends. It's a sucky answer, but it's a true answer. Some are going to need, tens or hundreds of logical qubits. That is a long way away. Some are going to need much smaller quantum volumes that allow you to do this hybridization approach of tearing a algorithm apart, maybe into 100 different pieces, and just one piece gets done really efficiently by a quantum computer. And so that piece gets carved out. That happens today. So if you ever hear something called a GPU, a graphical processing unit, it does a job really, really well, very efficiently. And so these get carved out and sent that way. The same thing is going to happen from a quantum computing standpoint.
Thank you, Tony. So I'm not afraid to say that I'm definitely one of the mere mortals, and I did not raise my hand when you asked about programming of quantum computers. And so this is all exciting, it's interesting. But what do I really need to do to take advantage of this amazing technology? What is step one? What do I do? Please give some advice to me and to those who have joined us today. Tony, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, I'll start. So it is a complex topic. It is something that you start in a place where most people get, hey, this is a problem I'm trying to solve, and pretty soon you're talking about equations or the use of atoms as a qubit, and so it gets kind of daunting. But I would back it up and say this is a tool. This is a tool, and this is the start of a technology that is going to change the world. It is going to profoundly impact some of the industries that we're in. Life science is probably at the forefront. And you say, well, yeah, but it's still this is really nascent. Why would I get into it today? Like, why would I even start today? Why don't I let somebody else do it? A couple things. First is, there are not many quantum computers on the planet, and their capacity is limited. And so if you don't get in today, you may not get in. And it's not because companies like Honeywell don't want to go build more of these things. It's because that's not our strategy. The strategy is not to go build 100 of the systems that we have today. The strategy is continuously launch an even more capable system as fast as you can to be able to really increase that arc on getting up the capability curve. And so being able to actually have been a part of it from the beginning to grow allows you to be in a position to actually take advantage of it as it happens. And the second, and probably most important, is that these are development pieces in our industry that take time. And again, Honeywell knows this. We have development projects that are decades in the making. If you want to think about taking a new technology and inserting it into the middle of your development effort, you have to be pretty good at understanding exactly when, where, how that goes in. Is the infrastructure going to be able to take it? Do I have the expertise in place to go do it? And so if you haven't started, if you're thinking about your own company, your own organization going, is this on the mind of the CTO or the CIO of my organization? If it's not, it's actually late. The companies, the organizations that are knowing how profound this is going to be, they're already engaged, they're already working on it. And I don't mean that as a scare tactic. I mean that as this is the time to jump in and learn. That's organizations like CQC are perfect at being able to say, okay, what is the art of the possible right now? What can we expect? What can we see? And as excited certainly as Honeywell is, we know we're going to be impacting our own businesses. And so we're already thinking about how to integrate this into Honeywell's offerings.
Tony, I'd like to add on that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And it's a great saying. We all need to take that first step and learn a little more about quantum computing. It's complex, but we can all gain a greater understanding of it. And certainly coming to this LinkedIn Live event certainly helps. What's interesting is that Cambridge Quantum Computing was actually hired by the UK government. The UK government was concerned that their top companies didn't have plans for quantum computing and didn't know enough to make plans. So we actually did what we called a quantum readiness program, where we educated the top 50 companies in the UK on quantum computing to help them to move towards having a point of view of how quantum computing could be used in their business, how it might impact their business, and how they strategically needed to plan for the advent of this new technology. So I think it's important that all of us acknowledge this is coming. In fact, it's here now, and it's about to start some major growth. And it's time for all of us to learn about it as a business, to acknowledge it, to start planning, to start thinking about it, research, think about as a business how you want to do it. I know it's hard to take the first step, and it's easy to say it's 3 years away or it's 4 years away, but the advances that we're seeing in this industry are so quick that we need to all jump in now. We need to learn it. And I think the best place to start, go to the Honeywell website. There's a lot of information on quantum computing there. Go to the Cambridge Quantum Computing website. Those are good starting points for your education. And it's, you know, this technology is here. There's going to be great impact, I believe, within the next 2 years. And so you all of us, me too, need to start learning more about it now.
Great, thank you both. So if I heard things correctly, it does truly sound like the age or moment of quantum computing and life sciences is now. It's starting, it has started. Whether it's simulation of complex chemical structures or molecular modeling, including comparing one molecule to another, elucidation of energy states or genomic analyses, faster development of new products, all could be potential benefits realized through quantum computing. And, you know, when I think about today and what we all do, I think that many of us participating in this event today want to be part of something bigger, something that leaves this earth and our society better than we found it, and improving patient outcomes and speeding critical phases of the drug development and commercialization continuum through quantum computing are far more tangible today than they were years ago. I am hopeful that today's discussion has served to whet your appetites a bit more and leaves you wanting more with respect to finding out what and how quantum computing can do to help you in the life sciences industry, and how you can really take advantage of the opportunities now. The quantum revolution is upon us, I think. And together we can really tackle these issues, the real and present issues facing our public's health today. We can make a difference to help make the world a healthier place, one patient at a time. So I think we have just a few moments maybe for 1 or 2 questions that have come through. I know a number have come through, and Tony and Denise addressed 1 or 2, I think, through their discussions. So I don't know, Tony and Denise, if you see 1 or 2 on the Q&A that you'd like to address. If we don't get to them today, we will find a way to get the answers out to everybody.
Yeah, I think there's a couple that that fall into a similar category. So I'm gonna mention it a little bit earlier, but I'll do maybe hopefully a better job. And that is separating out what quantum computers will be able to do from what they can do now. What we have today is, first, again, quantum computers. And Honeywell is proud to have the most high-performing quantum computer on the planet. We also have some very unique features in that, and something that, as people who think about classical computing, you might go, oh, shouldn't that exist anyway? But things like write quantum if statements, having the ability to measure a quantum bit in the middle of a calculation and then go and take a different action on it later in the same computation. those are very, very challenging things to do in quantum. And we can use that right now, and it's opening up an entire new era and a new kind of line of questioning that you'd be able to bring problems to quantum computing. It doesn't go solve something today that you could not still do on a classical computer. It doesn't. But that is a very important time. This is a very narrow window of human existence where you're going to be able to run something on a quantum computer and then fact check it on a classical computer. And you need to do that. That is, especially in life sciences, you absolutely have to be getting the right answer. And there's going to be a time, and that's not long, that ability to go and fact check goes away. And so the only answer will be the answer that comes out of a quantum computer. And if you haven't built up trust, then you're not going to be able to take advantage of what's going on. So it really is taking big problems, shrinking them down, testing them out on the quantum computers that exist today, knowing full well that as you scale up the quantum volume, you will absolutely scale up the size of the problem that you're tackling.
Great, thank you for that, Tony. Denise, did you see anything that you'd like to address specifically, or should we work to answer the rest of the questions offline? We've got a minute or two.
I think quantum volume, I think, is an important thing to talk about. And quantum volume is a metric used to compare different quantum computers. And there's a lot of information on the Honeywell quantum volume on their website. So I would, rather than enter into a discussion right now, unless Tony wants to comment, I would tell you to go look at the Honeywell website. Also to look at the roadmaps so that you can see the tremendous effort that Honeywell is doing to advance this technology quickly.
Great, thank you for that, Denise. So Elizabeth, I'm wondering if you could kindly share the visual. So if you would like to learn more, please feel free to reach out to one of us, reach out to honeywell.com to take a look. And we look forward to our next discussion in this life sciences series. It won't be on quantum, it'll be on a different topic, but stay tuned for that. And thank you so very much for spending part of your day with us today. Be safe, be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.